Top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Some momentous news for Ms. Great Britain, Natasha Jonas. Big news by way of boxer. There's also been some very big news by way of Matchroom.
We're going to talk about that news in another video.
There's big news all over the place. Natasha Jonas has been added to the upcoming Kell Brook versus Amir Khan grudge match. That box office pay-per-view in the United Kingdom. Here in the United States, we're going to be seeing that as part of our ESPN Plus subscriptions at no additional charge. And it appears the powers that be have found Natasha Jonas a title to fight for.
The WBO title at 154 pounds.
That's junior middleweight. She's going to be boxing former WBC junior middleweight champion of Poland, Eva Piatkowska, for what is the vacant WBO title. I told you guys, and I've been telling you, that title's set to go vacant very soon. That was Clarissa Shields' old WBO title, but because Clarissa's back at middleweight, that's where her next fights are going to be, the WBO, they have a rule. They don't allow any of their champions to hang on to a title if they're campaigning at multiple weights.
So Clarissa had to vacate that title.
Because she's not campaigning as a junior middleweight anymore. The landscape at 154 pounds is rapidly changing.
Can Natasha Jonas win this fight?
Natasha Jonas, God bless her, she's not a natural junior middleweight. The saving grace here is that neither is Eva Piatkowska. When Eva Piatkowska boxed for the WBC title all those years ago, she fought just above welterweight because Eva, like Natasha, is a fighter that had to move up to junior middleweight. Eva Piatkowska has never really been a full-fledged junior middleweight, though she has more experience at this weight as a defending champion than Natasha Jonas does.
Yeah, Eva defended that title at least 2 times there.
Eva Piatkowska, who's the same age as Natasha Jonas. Both are very fresh, very well-preserved, 37 years old, both Eva and Natasha. Eva has boxed as low as super lightweight and as high as junior middleweight, whereas Natasha Jonas,
She's fought as low as super featherweight and as high as lightweight.
it's 130 to 135 pounds. Natasha Jonas has no experience as a professional in the junior middleweight division, though against Eva, I don't think she'll be a fish out of water, because Eva isn't a genuine junior middleweight. If it were someone else,
If it were Patricia Bergould.
maybe a Marie-Eve Dicaire or a Hannah Rankin, those fighters, those are genuine junior middleweights. But Eva was always a fighter on the smaller, slinkier end of the spectrum.
That was never a genuine junior middleweight.
Thus, she's on the same boat as Natasha. In some ways she is. She, like Natasha, is a fighter that had to move up to junior middleweight. And for what it's worth, I think Natasha can deal. I think her power will carry.
This is going to sound crazy, but I think Natasha can win this fight.
I think she can become this division's WBO champion. Last couple of weeks, last couple of months, when it was announced that Natasha had decided to cross over to Sky and Boxer, I wondered what world titles would she fight for moving forward when most of the belts between 130 and 147 pounds, most if not all of them, are all tied up at Matchroom, and you just left Matchroom.
I half expected her to box Michaela Mayer for her 2 world titles.
She's the only champion at or around those weights that ain't all tied up with Matchroom. And I wondered, if she tries to fight Michaela Mayer, can Natasha Jonas still make 130 pounds comfortably? And I think we have our answer, because she's not moving down. She's moving up.
She boxed 2 times last year, and both of those fights were in the lightweight division.
So I did wonder if she could ever go back down to super featherweight. And once again, I think we have our answer, because rather than moving down, she's moving up, all the way up past welterweight to junior middleweight, having last fought in the lightweight division. That's 135 pounds up to 154. Quite a leap of faith, if I do say so myself. But I have faith in Natasha Jonas, and I do think she can win this fight. It's winnable.
Natasha Jonas was in action 2 times last year, and both fights were at lightweight.
Whereas Poland's own former champion, Eva Piatkowska, she was in action only once last year. Only once, and that was at 140 pounds at super lightweight. Both fighters are essentially moving up in weight for this fight. Eva has a little bit more experience at that weight than Natasha does, though all the same. They're both moving up.
The edge in experience overall has to go to Eva.
Experience at this weight and experience overall as a professional, that has to go to Eva Piatkowska, who's been around a bit longer than Natasha Jonas, has more pro fights, record of 16 wins and only 1 loss. That loss having happened years ago against her countrywoman, Eva Brutnitska.
The fight is a winnable fight, but that don't mean it's easy.
The saving grace for Natasha Jonas is that she's the same age as Eva Piatkowska, similar physical dimensions. Tasha was always a super featherweight and even a lightweight, a very generous dimensions, generous
In
proportions.
some ways, Tasha is evenly matched with Eva, vice versa.
We're going to be talking more about this fight as the fight date approaches. We will get into a full fight breakdown, but initial thoughts, I like the fight, and I think Natasha Jonas can pull it out. I think she can win it. In other news, per a tweet from ESPN Knockout, Fernando El Puma Martinez is going to be challenging IBF Super Featherweight champion Jerwin Ancajas of the Philippines on the 26th of February. That's next month, late next month. And with this,
So much for that Kazuto Ioka fight.
that Kazuto-Ioka unification match that was supposed to take place late last year, but due to COVID restrictions, Jerwin was unable to enter into the country. Thus, Kazuto-Ioka, he kept busy with someone else, someone more local. And I'm not very optimistic that those talks will be revisited because the Japanese borders aren't set to reopen until March.
I think it's March or sometime around the spring.
It's not even that Jerwin Ancajas is keeping busy with this guy. There's nothing wrong with that. He might as well since he didn't get to fight late last year. It's just that Jerwin Ancajas' career is handled by Sean Gibbons. And Sean, as we all know, he does a lot of business with the PBC. It seemed almost a miracle that they got that far to where they were going to have a unification match
Yeah.
in the land of the rising sun
Yeah.
with Kazuto Ioka. It was all set to go. And then
Too good to be true is what it was.
COVID happened. COVID restrictions, I should say. How confident are all of you out there that Ioka versus Ancajas as a fight, as a unification match? How confident are all of you that those talks will be revisited?
Anything set to go down in Japan has been pushed back.
I don't know that Team Ioka and Team Ancajas are still having dialogues and are still in communication with each other to reschedule the match, but I do know that Naoya Inoue, he's looking to unify with either Nonito Donaire or John Riel Casimiro. He's not set to return till June. Comes to that Golovkin versus Murata fight, same deal. They've got to reschedule that.
You guys out there got a lot of faith they reschedule this fight?
You know, I thought the super flyweight division would be an easier division to unify, but as it stands, it's proving difficult. Juan Francisco Estrada, reigning WBA and WBC franchise champion, better still, WBA champion Juan Estrada, he was supposed to be boxing Chocolatito for a third time, but he pulled out. Talked about it here on the channel. He's got the full-fledged WBA title, the WBC title, the world title. That title is vacant, and it's going to be on the line in Sorroom Visai versus Carlos Cuadras. Their rematch. Kazuto Ioka, who I mentioned earlier, he's got the WBO title, he's got the brown belt, and Jerwin Ancajas of the Philippines, he's got the red belt.
He's going to be defending against Fernando Martinez of Argentina.
Fernando, an unbeaten fighter that sports a professional record of 13 wins, no losses, no draws.
8 knockouts.
8 of them. For Jerwin Ancajas, it doesn't behoove him or his career at all to isolate himself from the other champions at this weight. Domestically, Kazuto Ioka is a much bigger name than Jerwin Ancajas is anywhere on the planet. The same more or less rings true for Juan Francisco Estrada, Carlos Cuadras, and Chocolatito, Sorroom Visai as well. Those are the more recognizable fighters and recognizable names at this weight. Jerwin often seems like the odd man out, so it really does behoove him to revisit that Ioka fight so he can make some waves of his own, so he can make a splash, because in a lot of ways, it feels like he hasn't.
He's going to be the forgotten champion until he does.
The Fab Four at Super Flyweight. Chocolatito, Juan Francisco Estrada, Sorroom Visai, Carlos Cuadras, they've all fought each other.
When the hell is Jerwin going to get on the dance floor?
Finally, more insights into a set of negotiations that seems to have gone down in the 11th hour between the Tyson Fury people, the Anthony Joshua people, the Dillian Whyte people, and the Alexander Usyk people, per tweet from Mike Coppinger. Portion of the article reads, the proposed deal would have paved the way for Fury to fight Usyk for the undisputed heavyweight championship in June in Saudi Arabia, sources said. It's believed The $155 million site fee the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia offered last year for a fight between Fury and Joshua was in play. Money from that package would have gone to both Whyte and Joshua. Whyte is the WBC's mandatory challenger, so he's owed an immediate shot against Fury. The rights to that fight will now be auctioned off at Friday's purse bid, which has been postponed numerous times to allow for a step-aside deal to be closed. It's possible the bout lands in the United Kingdom in the spring, but it will be up to whichever promoter wins the purse bid. There are no serious negotiations for Fury versus Whyte ahead of the purse bid. Joshua, the former unified heavyweight champion, was upset by Usyk in dominant fashion in September. The 32-year-old exercised the rematch clause in the contract, guaranteeing him an immediate return bout. The lucrative step-aside package Joshua weighed landed him a fight against the winner of Fury versus Usyk in December in Saudi Arabia. In that instance, Fury would have stayed busy with a tune-up fight in March in the UK before fighting Usyk, the former undisputed cruiserweight champion. Instead, Fury will have to get past Whyte, 34, and hope to fight the winner of Usyk versus Joshua later this year for all 4 belts. I can't wait to punch Dillian Whyte's face right in, mate. Fury, ESPN's #1 heavyweight, said in an Instagram video on Thursday, "I'm going to give him the best hiding he's ever had in his life. Dillian Whyte, train hard, sucker, because you're getting annihilated, bum." The collapse of the proposed undisputed heavyweight title fight in Saudi Arabia brings back memories of last spring, when Fury and Joshua were gearing up for an August 14th clash. The deal was in place then, but an arbitrator ruled that Fury owed Deontay Wilder a third fight. Fury, 33, scored an 11th round KO of Wilder in October, ESPN's fight of the year, but Joshua wasn't remotely competitive with Usyk, spoiling plans for a Fury versus Joshua fight. All the available information on what's been going on seems to indicate that Tyson Fury had every intention, and perhaps still has every intention, of returning in March, but not against Dillian Whyte.
That was part of the deal. When he comes back in March, he fights someone else in the UK.
We've had confirmation on the Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua, Dillian Whyte side of things of this proposed step-aside deal. And for what it's worth, it seems like the Anthony Joshua people were entertaining that deal whilst not having accepted it. But a part of that deal seems to have been that Tyson Fury gets to fight some handpick in March, that both Anthony Joshua and Dillian Whyte would have to step aside,
while Tyson Fury fights a handpick.
This more or less confirms what Eddie Hearn told people over there at IFL TV, that Tyson Fury didn't want to go straight into an Alexander Usyk fight. I mean, if someone was asking for Tyson Fury to have some sort of a fight in March,
right,
a homecoming fight in the UK, that would have presumably come from the Tyson Fury end of things. His people, not only did they want Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua to step aside, but they wanted to arrange for him to have a fight, a tune-up fight against a handpick, likely a Robert Helenius or Emmanuel Char.
Use your heads. If the Saudis are willing to bankroll this thing to where Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua step aside,
why the fuck would Tyson Fury be fighting someone else in March? Why the fuck would an interim fight against what would undoubtedly be a handpick, a Robert Helenius or Emmanuel Char? Why would that be part of the deal? Unless that's what the Tyson Fury people wanted, because the Saudis, they're already getting Anthony Joshua to waive his right to a rematch, and they're already getting Dillian Whyte to waive his right to a title fight. If they're bankrolling all of that, who exactly wants Tyson Fury to box in March against a handpick?
all likelihood it was Tyson Fury's people asking for that.
And that's likely what Eddie Hearn was referencing when he spoke to IFL TV, that based on what conversations and what dialogues were going on, Tyson Fury might have had the opportunity to go straight into a Usyk fight, but he didn't want to do that. He wanted to fight someone else beforehand, someone not named Dillian Whyte. When you tell people that Tyson Fury don't want no parts of Dillian Whyte, that there's something about that guy and there's something about that fight that he don't like,
people start chuckling.
people tend to laugh, and they shouldn't, because the heavyweight division is an ambiguous mistress, to say the least. Anything can happen if a guy can land, and for a lot of people, they tend to think of Tyson Fury as being all but invincible, and all of that is based on the Wilder fights. The last 3 fights he's had with Deontay Wilder in the last 3 years. But let me tell you something.
What?
Dillian Whyte ain't Deontay Wilder, and Styles, after all. they make fights. Dillian Whyte is a more prolific puncher than Deontay Wilder. They both got different sweet spots.
Wilder's best punches are his straight punches.
And that's why Tyson Fury was able to disarm him by coming forward and forcing Deontay Wilder on his back foot. Wilder wasn't able to generate the same power moving backwards that he does moving forwards, and he wasn't able to set up his trademark punch, his money punch, the straight right hand.
That was in the second fight.
In the third fight, Deontay Wilder managed to knock Tyson Fury down at least 2 times, and he landed that big right hand, but by the time he landed it, he was so spent, so exhausted, it didn't have as much mustard on it as it normally does.
It just wasn't enough to keep Tyson Fury down.
And outside of those 2 knockdowns, Deontay Wilder didn't get to land very many punches because Deontay Wilder has never been a characteristically prolific puncher, a busy puncher. He's always looking to land that big right hand to finish a fight. Dillian Whyte, on the other hand, he is a more prolific puncher. He is a mid-range to inside guy as opposed to Wilder, who throws his best punches from the outside coming in.
Dillian's more of a mid-range to inside puncher than Wilder is.
Thus, Tyson Fury coming forward and letting his hands go may not bother Dillian Whyte as much as it bothered Deontay Wilder, because Dillian Whyte is more comfortable in the pocket than Deontay Wilder is. I reiterate, they have different sweet spots, and styles make fights. Even if Tyson Fury beats Dillian Whyte, assuming they even fight. I don't think they will. But even if he does, he may get banged up in the process, and he may get banged up before he goes into that Usyk fight.
Or that Joshua fight, depending on who wins the rematch.
And that's why he wants a lighter touch in March. That's why he wanted to fight someone else, someone not named Dillian Whyte, ahead of what would be the undisputed heavyweight title fight.
And maybe that's why the deal collapsed.
I'm just speculating, but if the Saudis were willing to pay Dillian Whyte and Anthony Joshua to step aside, it would presumably be so that Tyson Fury could go straight into the Usyk fight, not so that he could fight someone else in March.
Now he has all this newfound enthusiasm for the Dillian Whyte fight.
When for all intents and purposes, he was trying to get out of that. He was trying to circumvent.
You were trying to get out of the Dillian Whyte fight. Now everybody knows it.